Well, here we are working back on this thermostat fiasco I got going on, and we can see that I have gaskets made, so we are very close to having this all back together. So the end result is before you, and I'll show you what I've kind of had to do. So this is the Milano thermostat housing that in the previous video hadn't been modified, so I have modified this now, and the correct amount of depth that this needs to be taking down from the flange surface here ended up being about 4.4 millimeters to get this rubber gasket just the right amount of compression for it to work properly and to seal properly. I then took various other tools and grinders and stuff like that to hollow out the rest of the junk in there, and then sent a big drill bit down the center of it to get rid of the junk that is down inside that hole, so that it's a nice clear path. Nice clear path now. Nothing done to that to speak of. The gasket, I ended up going with a 1 millimeter thickness gasket because that ended up being the last millimeter I needed to get the right amount of bypass height. So after redoing the stack, so I'll just put this in here just to show. So after getting this at the right height, through that housing, and then through the bypass on the water pump housing, I still needed 1 more millimeter. And that was the thickness of that gasket that I made just now. So that's going to get me exactly where it needs to be. So we can see on that water pump housing, what I ended up doing is I ended up throwing that into my drill press, and I ended up putting a 1/2 inch end mill into the drill press and milled this down from the surface of the flange by 3 millimeters. So previous that was completely flush, and now that is 3 millimeters recessed. And then in addition to that, I enlarged the bypass hole very, very slightly to 3/4 of an inch. So I ran a 3/4 inch drill bit straight down through that to enlarge it. Then to top it all off, I'll get the thermostat here. We can see that on the bottom of this bypass, there is a little bit of an angle to it. So I used a tapered cartridge roller as well as a countersink bit, and I made the transition, instead of being flat, it kind of tapers in to follow the curve of this valve here, so that it's a nice transition, and the thermostat is able to fit into there really nicely. So it's got a little bit of play on here now. You can see I can move this back and forth so that if there's a little bit of play up top, the whole system will work. So before it was very tight, so now we are just perfect. So I assembled it all. Previous, obviously, to putting it on the car, I threw it on the stove, and this thermostat just began to open. So that seal cracked on there at 78 degrees Celsius. And then at slightly over 84 degrees Celsius, this bypass closed on that housing, basically preventing any circulation from happening between the hot and cold side. So the thermostat will begin to open on the car around just under 80 Celsius, and by 85 Celsius, full flow will be going to the radiator with no bypass. So that is extremely close to intended, and as far as I'm concerned, quite a successful modification. And so hopefully the next video or two we'll get the rest of this stuff all wrapped up, and we will see how it performs on the car. So it's going to be, I'm thinking, a lot better than the original aftermarket, or I should say aftermarket thermostat that was on here. Anyway, bye for now.